So you're out in Minnesota, yeah?
Yeah, yep. Not too far from actually where the Mall of America is, just a half an hour. So,
Is it more Minneapolis or Minnesota? Because they're kind of I've never been out there. I was hoping to have been out there this year actually with MMS, but are they kind of very close cities?
yeah. So, I'm here in the Minneapolis St. Paul area, closer to St. Paul, but it's part of the metro right here in Minnesota.
Right. Okay. So when MMS is really a stone's throw away for you then.
Yeah. The first few years I just commuted because I wasn't a speaker back then, and I was just an attendee. So, my work paid for tickets, but not for hotel rooms. So we just drive in every day.
Nice. Yeah. And what was that the original Microsoft MMS? Was it or the actual?
No, yeah, so to me, I didn't get into Config Manager when they had, the Microsoft one. That was, before my time. So I really only know the one that Mason put together.
Nice and near for you. Like I say, it's it's one of those things where we look at it with envy over here. If you're not going, it's like, I mean, I suppose even if you live there, you don't go. There's a bit of jealousy and fear of missing out.
Right.
But for yourself, you're right there. So when we do like a W mug in London, it's it's 10 miles away. Not even that for me. So I just jump on my bike or jump on
Oh,
the
no.
train, whatever. Pop down there. It's perfect. You get a day of that. But you get, Peter Edgerton or Jerry Hampson who are flying over, or Peter's, coming down on the train. The dedication of doing that is great, because for me, like I say, it's just round the corner. Although I did do, did I do W Mug Manchester,
Oh, yeah.
where Peter said, "Yeah, I'm going to do this, sort of spin off a northern branch of this." So it's a couple of 100 miles away from London,
Ooh.
and I went and stayed with my mum up in the north, just to kind of, it's normally about a little over an hour away to drive. You're driving over an area called the Peak District, which is our version of having some mountains and hills, and not really mountains, sorry, some hills and countryside and national park. Um, and the day that it happened, it started snowing. And it took me 4 hours to get to this event. The event was already running, and we had three people in attendance because everyone had decided that they wanted to get home, which is fair enough. It was
Yeah.
an evening thing, but the dedication of us doing that sort of thing. But for you, MMS is nice and near. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
perfect. So yeah, so Gary Blok, thanks ever so much for taking part in this week's Just a Couple of Jerks podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Ah, it's a pleasure. Because Gary, you're totally active in the community. As you just alluded to there, you hadn't been into Config Manager for, well, I say too long. Was it 2012 you started with?
It was 2012. So at my first place where I was, starting Config Manager, they had 2007, but, right away, even then when I started, the betas for 2012 were out, and Kent was doing classes, on 2012 in our area, and they wanted to get me trained, so they sent me to Kent's class. So, I really don't have any experience with 2007. It's all 2012 and newer.
Yeah, I have that same feeling. Well, not feeling, but I missed out on SMS back in the day. Maybe that was a good thing. But 2007 was my first intro. But yeah, you've been involved with it for a little while now.
Right.
Not that long, but it is still a little while, isn't it? 8 years or so. But you're massively involved in community. In fact, I would say you are the guy who should be MVP, and you get a lot of this on from people in the saying that online. But you don't deal with Intune. I think that's the blocker, isn't it? Really, that you don't really do modern management where you work.
That's what I hear anyway. Yeah, I don't touch Intune, mostly because we don't use it at work, and I just don't have time, on the personal side to work on stuff that I'm not gonna be using because it's just gonna get rusty anyway, so I just stick with what I know and enjoy doing that.
Yeah, and do that pretty well. So you've got your blog, Garytown.com, yeah?
Yeah.
How did that all kickstart then?
Oh, man. So, I've owned Garytown since college, and if you use, like, the Wayback Machine, you could probably check it out, and it's a lot different than it is now. It was just a personal blog of my traveling around the US and whatnot. And then uh, when I got married, it kinda just went away. I bought a new domain for our family and used that for personal stuff, and Garytown just kinda went by the wayside. And then, several years later, I still own the domain name because you can't let go of something like that. At MMS, during a bunch of the bird of the feather, uh, things that I would attend, and people would have questions. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I've done that," and I talk them through stuff during those sessions, and the question kept coming, "Well, do you have a blog?" Like, "No." And, so Johan, was actually the person who spurred me on to making a blog, back in 2015, and, I started my first post was about Windows 10 customizations, and, that's still one of the popular like, when I look at my traffic, it's still one of the most popular blog hits, so
It's funny actually, those things that stick
yeah.
around the blogs. Mine is how to deploy an exe by Config Manager. That gets massive amount of hits. In fact, I did a YouTube video of it, and I have around 300 YouTube subscribers, and I do nothing else on it. I think, why are people subscribing to me? There's no content whatsoever here at all. Yeah, and I saw that kind of Windows 10 customization stuff kicking in, and were you at the big bank at the time then?
No, no, yeah, I was, before this place, I was at the state of Minnesota working for the state government, doing stuff there.
Right. Okay. So just through those experiences, you started adding that content, and was it? I mean, obviously, the amount of devices you're managing now is quite big, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what's the comparison? What were you managing previously to what you are now?
Oh, man. So, at the state, I worked for the Department of Health, so just a small subset of the actual entire state, and, I had, like, 2,400 machines that I was, responsible for there. So, I mean, now it's, 400,000, and 2,400 is not even big enough to be considered a pilot anymore, so
Wow. Yeah, and I was speaking to a chap called Chris Roberts who works for SAP over here in the UK, and we were talking about numbers because they manage around 120,000 or so
yeah.
devices. And I was trying to comprehend that. I mean, the largest I've worked with a company where there was 100,000 devices, which the plan was to get those into Config Manager. But the main bulk of it was around 20 odd thousand, 30,000. And I've worked with a couple of companies that size. Um, but the scale it goes out. And I kind of said to Chris, does it not matter after a certain amount? It's just the same thing, the same problems. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Even going from the 2,000 up to 400,000, the same challenges, you gotta make the same things. It's just that y we end up doing a fair bit more testing than I used to, just to it can be a little bit more of an impact if your first pilot goes bad versus, when you have a pilot of, like, 5 or 6 computers so
Definitely. So it's all the key is the testing then. So
oh, yeah.
so the customization stuff that you did then. So that was your initial sort of dipping your toe into the waters then with blogging. And did you see kind of and I was always interested in the Garytown name. I thought that's quite cool. Garytown. What's that? What does that mean? So you kind of answered that. You kind of kickstarted that, and then did you see? Was it a case of seeing that people were actually looking at it, or what did was just kind of the interest of doing it sort of spur you on to do more?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. I was kinda surprised how, that there were quite a few views, and then, it just kinda ended up becoming at work, they were really starting to push us to do documentation. So I was like, "Well, instead of doing documentation at work, I'll just start using my blog for what I'm working on to keep track of stuff." And, it actually, um, kinda lended itself to creating blog posts because I was just actually doing it on work time when they were telling me to document, I would just put it on my blog instead.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, because half the time these documents never get read, do they? And I don't know
It's
about yourself,
true.
but I've written so many. You think that's never going to get read, but if it's out there on the net, it can get searched on, not just by the people you're doing it for, but by anyone else. I mean, I was really surprised to see stat. I mean, my initial, the SCCM mentor thing was all around a self-help database for myself when I had a problem that I'd completely forgotten how to fix it. But to see people from around the world coming along, it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So from there again, I mean, you've done presenting, you've presented at MMS and other places as well. So was that again a choice that you made, or did someone kind of go, "Come on, you should be presenting this as well"?
Oh, man. Yeah, so, I'm not really a big fan of presenting in general. It's definitely outside my comfort zone. So, I had no intents of ever doing that, but, my coworker, Mark Godfrey, after MMS one year was just super pumped, and he's like, "We gotta present." And I was like, "Oh, fine. If you put together, and submit our presentations,
Yeah, I'll
I'll
do
I'll
it with
I'll
you.
go present with you." Um, and it ended up kind of becoming uh, a little bit of a rush. The first year, the first presentation, I was up there the night before. I didn't sleep. I felt sick. I had headaches, and I just like shaky.
Why am I doing this? Yeah.
Uh, and, like, the first presentation, we got one of the big rooms, and I was like, "Oh, man."
Oh yeah, yeah.
But,
So how many people were in that room then? Is that like
oh,
500?
uh, you know, yeah, it was a few hundred. I'm not sure how many, but, it was quite a few. And then, one of the other presentations, we found that Jorgen and, Nash were doing something really similar. So Greg Ramsey said, like, "Why don't you guys connect up and make sure you're not duplicating anything?" And we ended up just merging. So we ended up, spending time with Nash and Jorgen and, just making our joint Windows 10 customization presentation, and that actually really helped bridge some of those gaps because those two are awesome at presenting, and so they really took us under their wing and helped us to get to that point where we were more comfortable presenting. And um, yeah, I really loved working with Jorgen. He is just an ace, man. He knows so much about what. And even if he didn't, the way he talks, like, he just sounds so knowledgeable. But it's great working with him, and, yeah, so it because of these events, being able to work with people that are further ahead than you, they help bring your game up, and then it's been fun to being able to do that with other people now.
Yeah, I think also it's a confidence builder as well, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't say I stayed up the night before, but I hate presenting. But I still get nervous now. So even if I'm doing like, I mean, I did a 10-minute slot last week at Adam's feature update
Yeah.
webinar, and I just get so nervous beforehand. I mean, I was kind of like that, I still am when people they go around the room. Let's go
Mhm.
around the room and introduce ourselves. And it's coming up to me, and I'm like, oh God, it's me next.
Yeah.
What am I gonna say? It's just it's built into us, isn't it? I suppose. But I found it's getting easier, but still, I still get the flutters. But having other people there who are either going through the same thing or at least giving you confidence or something, the ones who give you confidence, you're like, don't worry about it, be absolutely fine. That sort of thing really helps.
Yeah.
And I've met Jurgen a couple of times, obviously with the summit, and he's a nice guy, and I can see how he will give give that back and the way that he would present. I mean, I watch Jan as well, Jan Kettelskanke. presenting, and he just looks like a natural at it. And some people just are. I think there's a built-in, maybe they're the trainer types,
Right.
possibly who do that. So I mean, you still present as well, and actually, you know, looking at the stats, I've seen some feedback results, I think from last year's, and weren't you the top presenter?
No, no, it's just number 2.
Number two, oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
David
behind David
James.
James, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah, just behind David James, yeah. Who, I mean, you've obviously seen David present
oh,
as
yeah,
a natural at it, and but he's got that insight, insider knowledge and everything as well, hasn't he? So to come second to him is pretty amazing.
right.
Um, how did that happen? You know, how does that happen? Do you think?
Oh, I think I really enjoy what I'm talking about, and then just throughout the conferences too, I try to make myself available, and I have so many side conversations throughout the week of the conference that, however many people voted for me, I probably had personal conversations with. So that's kinda what
Is
I'm
that when you
aiming to
slip in a
do.
few dollars? Here you
Yeah,
go. You need a few votes here.
yeah.
So how many of the MMSs have you done then? So presenting wise, which was your first one?
Oh, man, the first one I think was 2016, uh and then so I think I presented at 4 local and 2, destination ones.
So they're the fall ones, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
or the autumn ones as we call it.
Right, right.
The real word for that season, yeah, the autumn. Um, yeah, joking. Yeah, so they're little. For anyone who doesn't know, they're kind of mini cut down versions of MMS. Am I right? Because I've never
Right.
been.
Oh, yeah, it's really nice because it's a smaller, number, and you really get to, know some of the people better, and then, just because of where they are, they're really, pro bringing your own family. So the last couple I've brought my wife, and the last one was actually over our anniversary. So we took one of the nights and just enjoyed the restaurant at the hotel, and actually brought a few of the kids to the last one, which was really cool. So
Didn't we? Didn't we have a something around a common date? Don't we have the same wedding anniversary?
ours is November 11th.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, we got the same wedding anniversary.
Oh,
So yeah,
nice.
I think you said something on Twitter. I went, oh no, no way, that's mine as well. So congratulations, coming up in a couple of months on the
Yeah.
11th. So how many years will that be then?
Oh, that's gonna be.
You can't think about it. You should know this.
Yeah. I just think, like, how old's my daughter, and then add one. So it'll be 14.
Oh, God. Don't let your wife listen back to this.
Yeah.
How old's my daughter? And then plus one. Yeah, that's how many years I've been married to you. Yeah, so it'll be my 20th actually this year. So
Oh,
that's quite a special number, I
that
suppose,
is.
isn't it?
That is.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I believe you've got quite a few kids. So I've got four. So you're beating me on the kid front, aren't you?
Yeah, we've got our half a dozen. We've got 6 now. We had our 5 girls, and then, a couple years ago, we had our boy.
Was that you were hoping for that, or so we've got five now. We've got to get the boy. Keep going till we do.
Nah, we just kept going, and, with no plans of stopping or starting, it just kinda happened.
Yeah. So your eldest, she's 14 then. So the youngest is your boy. Is he?
He's 2. Yeah, our oldest will turn, 13 because 'cause we'll be having our 14th anniversary, and then, so we've got about, 12 years or 11 years between the first and last so far.
I don't know. Well, I suppose it's like config manager and numbers, isn't it? Once you
Yeah.
get past a certain amount, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah,
You know, people might think that, but,
it's
that
not,
that
is it?
no, the bills and everything just keep going up to that steady incline, so.
And I mean, my eldest is 20, and my youngest she's 30. So we had three boys and a girl. Yeah, so we kind of went the opposite way to you,
Oh, nice.
and we didn't. Well, yeah. I mean, did we plan to stop? I don't know. Just four was enough. And but I can't imagine keeping going at that younger age because there's different phases, aren't there, with kids?
Oh,
You
yeah.
you know it, yeah. And but to go back to that buggy phase and the nappy phase, wow, fair play to you. Is there a gap between some of them? Have you kind of gone a few years before the next one arrived?
Yeah, so between our 1st and 2nd, there's 4 years, and, it was a hard 4 years 'cause we wanted to have our 2nd, and, it just wasn't happening, and we lost a couple in there, and so then after that, we're like, "Well, um, w if we're given any more, we'll be thankful," and so, after that, we're not gonna, prevent anything, and we'll just take whatever we get because we just don't know, and each one's gonna be a blessing, so, yeah, it was really hard to get number 2, and then they just started continuously coming.
You're not over it yet, then? There's room for more.
There's always room for more.
So how do you find the time then? So this is the thing, it's you're doing a lot of community stuff, but you've got the family as well. How do you juggle that? Is that something you find easy to do?
Um, so lately, I've just been taking and unplugging on weekends, so, uh, you know, after work on Friday, I just kinda close the computers and, uh, just put it away. Even Twitter, I barely touch on the weekends, and I'll just pick stuff back up on Monday, but that just means, that my weekdays are a little crazy, so my typical day is, around, 8 o'clock or so, come down the basement, work at home, which is just marvelous.
Was that before lockdown, yeah, as
Oh,
well when you
yeah.
were at home? Yeah.
Yeah, that was another, main reason I went to Wells Fargo was the work from home,
Mm.
ability, and so, 8 o'clock and then work until about 5-ish. I try to cut off. No, I work with Mike Terrell and now Nathan, from Denver,
Oh yeah.
and,
Yeah. He's recently come on board, yeah.
yeah, yeah, he's great, by the way. You should make sure you talk to him, but, so they're a couple hours different, so, I get a little peace and quiet in the morning, but Mike's an early riser, and, so he's usually up anyway, and then I get my 5 o'clock, I try to cut out, but, Mike, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, his brain is, like, at full steam, and so I'm always like, "I gotta go," and Mike's like, "Oh, I gotta run this one last thing by you," and, he's like, "Okay."
Just go, come on, man. Let me go.
I
Got
gotta go be
family.
with dinner for the kids, but, yeah, so I try to make sure I'm done around 5, and then, it's usually the next few hours are family time, dinner with the whole family, and, try to do something fun for that, and then the littlest ones start to go to bed at 7, and then, usually by 8:30 or so, we have all the bedtime routines done with the ones that really need help, so
God, I mean, I remember those days well, I mean, it was teenagers trying to get them to bed as well. But when they're younger and they're jumping out of the bed, and do you find yourself? I used to just lie next to some of them, and then next thing, if a few hours it would have passed, I'd completely zonked out with them. It's fond memories of
Uh,
that. But are you? Do they? Is it like rounding up the cattle or whatever? Just trying to get them to sleep, or are they pretty decent?
most nights that they're pretty good, but there are definitely those few nights. Uh, uh,
Kids will be kids
uh,
ultimately.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
It's all part of parenting. The hardest job in the world,
yeah.
and the one with the least. Well, I wouldn't say the least thanks because you get back from them, but you're not going to get the word thank you back from
Well,
them that much unless they're pretty good.
yeah, parenting's about the long game. You win a couple battles here and there, but you just pray you win the war and have good relationships with them once they're old enough to understand how much work and love you put in.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going through a phase at the moment of trying to shoe ours out of the house one by one. That's that's yeah. The eldest, like I say, he's on the move now. He's year three in his studies, and he's out in Germany this year. But my second boy is due to start in a college where he'll be boarding for 4 to 5 nights a week. So you're kind of going, right, off you go, do your thing, and then mutter, "Don't come back" at the end. Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's a challenge regardless, but a challenge at the moment for the kids with everything that's going on in the world. Um, just to succeed, the fact that we're going through this COVID situation impacts us all. But trying to get out into the real world. I mean, my eldest didn't think Germany was going to happen at one point. I mean, how's that been for you? I mean, obviously you were working from home anyway. But I suppose the kids wouldn't be at school, would they? They'd be at home.
Well, and so that hasn't changed much for us. We homeschool anyway, so the only thing that changed was all their extracurriculars got canceled. So, like we had a pool membership, and then we'd go to the pool and do stuff there, and all that just like kind of dried up. But um, thankfully, summer was coming, so like we bought a few extra things for the backyard, and they just go out there and play a bit more. And the hot days, we just have a blow up pool, and they play in that, and it's been good times for the summer. But now with the winter quickly approaching again, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I actually had a quick look. This is part of my in-depth research to the climate over where you are, and you get pretty decent. Well, you get a real range of things, don't you? You get a pretty decent summer.
Yeah, summer.
Gets up to the 40s. Sorry, for hundreds. Sorry, hundreds. I'm doing Celsius. Yeah, and then you've got a real. I think it's said on now. This could be wrong, but in on Wikipedia that you have the coldest winter of all the cities in the states.
Yeah, it gets cold. It definitely gets cold.
So you have a real mix of stuff, and it was saying you get like thunderstorms, fog, snow, all the range of stuff in the winter as well.
Yeah, I'm just thankful that I don't get earthquakes, and I don't get hurricanes, and, so the huge those guys I don't gotta worry about, but everything else I can kinda handle.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't like to be on the end of some of the storms that are coming in on the south coast. That
Right.
just looks horrific to me. Um, yeah, so that's coming up. So they're going to be a little bit stuck and a bit indoorsy. So we'll, I don't know how you do it if you've got them all running around. You just kind of, is it kind of mum says dad's getting on with work, or does your wife work as well?
Oh, so my wife stays home, and she does the homeschooling, and then, she does so much around here that it's more than a full-time job, that's for sure.
And you can just put your feet up, yeah, and and chill while she's running around.
Yeah, I try not to get caught with my feet up too much.
Yeah, exactly. Just got to do another blog, love. I'll be an hour and a half, and she's like throttling you almost. Get in
You
here.
got
It's
dinner and bedtime, right? You're good. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I always remember the feeling though of sort of working out in the city and coming home, and it's been one of those days where she's had it's just not worked out and that, and she's had enough. And but you've had a hard day in the office, and you walk in and you're shattered. You've done the commute, or I was cycling back as well, so be extra tired, maybe wet through, maybe it rained or it was
Mm.
cold or whatever. You get in the door, it's right, you're taking over. You're like, oh man, let me just get myself together.
Right.
So, was IT? I always ask this question to people. Was it something you wanted to do then, Gary, as a kid? Was this your passion? Was this your thing, or is it
Uh,
something you kind of stumbled into?
I kinda stumbled into, I mean, as a kid, IT wasn't really a thing yet. I mean, as young as I am, I'm still not that young, but,
Yeah, because how old are you, Gary?
uh,
30.
I'm turning
I'm guessing
40 this next January
40. Right.
already. Yeah.
Wow. Don't worry, I'm hitting it. I'm at January. Hold on a minute. We got could have some date clashes coming. I mean, I'm January as well, so I'm going to be 50 in January.
Ah.
Um, can't wait for that one.
Yeah, so, just one of those things had kind of a natural knack for. I was originally planning to go to, university for being a history teacher because I really enjoy history, and then, they started offering some computer classes, when I was a senior, and, they just it it came too easy not to take advantage of. So, instead of going to 4-year university, I did a 2-year tech school, for computer networking, and then just kinda, slowly progress. You start out as a service desk type of thing, and you just go take your turn, and you work up as you get to know the different areas.
So was it something that you kind of understood anyway? So you got this offered. Were you doing a you know because you say history, it's quite a difference, isn't it, in the way that the brain works on those two things? I would have thought to do computer networking. Was it something you understood, or
It was, and, it just ki so, like, I'm not a fan of reading in general, and for some reason, when you wanna be a teacher and some of those other things, you gotta do a lot of reading. So, uh, I enjoy my history documentaries, quite a bit still, but, I'm kinda glad I sheered away from doing that, but whereas with IT, it's like things just kinda naturally came. I didn't have to try hard, and it just like, the solution always presented itself, so I've
it kind
just
of
kind of
worked out?
worked. Yeah, exactly, so it was
So when
perfect.
you say it came to sorry, when you say the course came too easy, so you were offered that without having to have certain grades, or
Oh, no, it just oh, in my head, it just made sense. I didn't have to try very hard, and, I'd get good grades in those subjects, and, uh, and another thing for, when I went to tech school, I got a, internship at the local IT department in their service desk area for a work study, and I learned so much more in tech school working for the local IT company than or for the local IT on campus than I did in any of the classes. So having that base really helped.
so what kind of things were you dabbling with there? Then was that supporting the systems? You say.
Right, yeah. So it was supporting the teachers, and then supporting the labs and stuff like that. So, I mean, that was when you learn Ghost, and you learn it was the Windows 95 era was just taking off.
Yeah, yeah. So were you exposed to 3.1 then? It was a little bit of that.
No, uh, I was actually a Mac boy before college. I had my first computer was a Macintosh, and so I grew up, and in education it was a lot of Macs. So I didn't really get to the PCs until college, and then so Windows 95, and we were just starting to upgrade to 98 at that time. So that's really my first thing, and then, of course, Novell, ruled for network authentication at that time, especially in education, so
Yeah, it was NetWare 3.3.1.2, was it, or
yeah, and I think I really got into it in Network 4, um, and then, so I took my Novell classes and got my certification back then, so that was useful now, but, and then It then looking at Windows NT and that's like, "Man, this is such a mess compared to Novell," and finally, 2000 server came out, and that was at least somewhat decent, but
yeah, it was kind of like you compare it at the time, wouldn't you? I'd be going, "Oh, Novell does this so much better," but it didn't survive. Microsoft reigned supreme with that in the end with AD. So when you finished up at the college, then you say you started off with some kind of support jobs, or did you flow straight into something?
no, it was support jobs. The first job I could get, the only thing that I could really find was a, consultant job, doing, basically service desk type thing for an area up in northern Wisconsin, a super remote area, and yeah, different clients every day, just small business mostly, and even home users that needed help. They'd call this little IT company that was up there in this little rinky-dink town.
Did you have to relocate for that?
I was I did not in the end. I just commuted the hour and a half up there, and it was not an area I wanted to live. And they said they were going to open a new office in a different town that I was okay with, and they never did. So it was about the 4 month mark, and like, nah, I can't do this. So it was right before summer, and I took. It's like, well, I'm just going to take the summer off, and then look again in the fall. Uh, and then actually the school that I was an internship, they hired me to just do some odd jobs. They needed some extra help, so I went back and worked with them a bit just to cover it for a while. And then eventually I got my first, I'd say real job that I stuck with for a while, which was service desk back here, and that brought me back to Minnesota. Uh, so that's yeah, a couple of years of doing service desk type stuff at the business was about a couple hundred employees, so not big, but it was enough that they needed support, and it was small enough that they had a small enough IT company that even though you're service desk, you end up dabbling in a lot more, which was nice.
Yeah, that those things really help, don't they? I found back in that. So I didn't do it. I never did a pure kind of help desky service desk role. I kind of worked for companies that were smallish at the beginning, so I was kind of dabbling in various things. I did one stint where um, it was you had to cover the phones for a little while. I think you maybe had like a morning shift,
Hmm.
and then in the afternoon you went out and did the jobs that you'd picked up as part of the calls that you did in the morning or anything that was in the queue kind of thing.
Right.
But it's great that you can kind of, you're doing a bit of networking, you're doing a bit of firewall stuff, you're doing things that you wouldn't normally pick up on, and it allows you to just, just get that kind of helicopter view of things, even if you're not an expert in these. In these, I mean, my networking skills are just absolutely desperate. They really are. And in fact, when I did my MCSE for, I think it was maybe 2003, that was the one exam I had to retake. I just could not get my head around it for whatever reason. But it's great that you get to dabble. It just gives you that all round knowledge, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. To understand how the different systems interact with each other, so that you can make better decisions from looking down versus being stuck in your little area.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Um, we used to have some fun on the phones as well at times, but I did get thrown into one stint only for about an hour and a half back in the noughties, where I was working at a place, local government just around the corner from where I am, and they had us cover the phones. I was working on projects at the time, and they were having a meeting, so just needed some cover. And my God, the pressure. I couldn't believe it. I was like, these questions being asked of me, normally you'd have a bit of time to think about it.
Mhm.
And people were, and I thought, I couldn't do this. This is too much stress. And I was like, going, right, I'm just going to have to log this and I'll pass this on. The unfortunate thing is it actually got passed on to myself, some of these calls for further up the chain. So, but the pressure of being on the phone at the time, I found really, really intense. And I thought, no, that's too much. So I mean, you're kind of specializing now in a way, aren't you? Because you're just, you're into one area.
Right,
And
right.
was that something that just, again, over time, just slowly, you got introduced to Config Manager 2012, but were you sort of kind of going that way, or I think you no, I think I've heard you say before you used to manage Alteris.
Yeah, wow, good memory, Paul. Uh, yeah, so, I worked for a K-12 school district for a while, and they had, Altiris, so that's that was one of the first major, asset management systems that I worked with for managing workstations. And it's one of those things, like the first one that you use that's decent, you kind of get comfortable with, and then you compare everything to that. And I can remember like using uh 2007 just for a little while, like, man, Altiris is so much better than this. Because Altiris was instant. You try to do something versus like, I gotta wait for an hour. What are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
So getting this fast channel lately is quite nice. And
So what did Altiris manage then? Was it exactly the same? Was it all around software deployment, or did it do patching and things like that as well?
so I don't think it did patching, but it's software deployments, operating system deployments, uh, get information on a lot of things, and we used WSUS for patching back then. So yeah,
It can be quite frustrating, can't it, with Config Manager, where you're having to say to people, "This is not going to happen straight away. Um,
right.
give it a moment or two, or maybe more, as we await the results." So we are seeing some of that fast channel stuff happening now, which is quite a blessing. So you kicked in with Config Manager, and it's been, you've not looked back since, really. I mean, like I say, you're one of those people in the community that's seen to be out there and totally involved. And is that something you're gonna keep doing? You're gonna continue doing? Obviously, with presenting wise, is all kind of virtual now. Are you going to get involved in all that kind of thing as well?
Um, I'll do a little bit from here and there. I'm trying to make sure that I do better time management, saying no when I need to say no, and trying to make sure I give enough time to here at home and whatnot. The other thing is I work for a recast part time now too, and so I'm giving them a good chunk of my evenings. So my personal blog is definitely quieted down unless there's something that doesn't make any sense to post at recast. I'll post it on mine, but otherwise I'm trying to dedicate my evenings to working for recast software and building out some of their materials.
So, what kind of things are you working on there then?
So for recast, when they do new releases, I'll go through it, do a lot of their Q&A, help find some of their initial bugs, and then I'll blog a lot of their stuff. They kind of pre-document or show less official documentation, and more like, this is how you would use it in your environment, almost as like a how some of the clients would actually use it. And then usually quick little videos for each new release. And between the releases, when there's time, then I've started working on other things that are um, kind of related to workstation management that they would find value in. The clientele of recast, what their clientele would find value for, uh, instead of having to go all over and search for blogs that are loaded with advertisements and stuff. It's like, just come check out our documentation, and uh, it's a safe place to start. Our company, and then from there you can move on. So
Yeah, and so you also compile a monthly list
yeah.
of things as well. How much time does that take up?
Yeah, that's actually really time consuming. So a lot of it though is just like, kind of each day I just kind of scroll through Twitter, and anytime I see a blog post from someone, or something that catches my eye, I just share it to myself as an email. And then when I get to that point in the month, I just scroll through the 60 things in my inbox that I sent to myself, and kind of accumulate stuff there. I've got pretty good contacts at the four different um, hardware vendors. Microsoft Surface, and then Lenovo, Dell, and HP, and I email those guys every month, and ask for, like, hey, is there anything that you would want, your customer base to know, who are managing workstations that you might not normally get in front of during that month. And they've been pretty good to work with, and they'll send me like, hey, this is some of our new tools or some new things that are coming up that our clients should know about. So
Are they people you're working with quite intensively then during the day then as part of your day job that you've built up contacts with?
Just actually just HP. Nathan from HP, I'll contact somewhat regularly through work when we're having some things going on with HPs, or I've got a suggestion because um, HP's been great in that regard. Where if I'm working with their tools a lot, and I'm like, oh, I wish it did this, or I found this problem, I'll just email Nathan, and it's quite cool because him and his team they'll get back to me same day, like, oh yeah, that's a great point, or hey, yep, we replicated your issue, and within the next 24 hours or 72 hours or whatever, we'll have a thing released. And so HP's been great. I kind of gave up on some other manufacturer, which I won't
Right.
name,
We
but
won't mention. Yeah.
uh, uh, giving them feedback, just like, oh, they give you the head nod, like, yeah, that's great, and then never hear boo about anything happening. So
And that's the thing. I mean, that interaction with community and getting that feedback helps improve. So it's interesting. It depends on the business, I suppose, but I will more likely veer towards someone who gets involved in that way, helps improve things. Um, and makes ticks things over, makes things work when there are problems. There's nothing more frustrating than a bug that's stopping you, or a bug that's causing a customer such grief.
hmm.
Um, I've had one recently. Again, I won't mention the vendor, but it caused so much grief between the business I was working with and their customer for 6 months, and a small little thing that eventually got resolved, but we'd fed back with the problem and got nowhere with it, and then eventually it did, and you just feel, you're hitting a brick wall because part of you is going, is this definitely a problem with the hardware, or is this something in the build, or you're trying to pinpoint the problem and you're spending hours and hours and hours trying to isolate it. I can imagine you're going through similar things with what you do at times, yeah.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
You're kind of checking yourself at times, aren't you? You're going through scenarios. Is this this? Is this that? What's causing this? If I take this away, is it that?
Right,
And if the vendor had just go, actually, yeah, we've replicated that. We know it's a problem with this.
right.
So much the better. But yeah, they don't always, as you say. Not everyone's willing to partake in that, unfortunately. So yeah, it was quite interesting because I saw those kind of. It's monthly, isn't it? You're sending out those
Yep.
community
Yeah, we
updates.
have our
Yeah.
monthly recap that we like to send out, and so yeah, I try to cover a lot of the Microsoft technologies, and try to put in there like what's going on in the community, what events you can try to connect up with. Got to know a lot more about the different user groups that are out there too, and try to make sure I found contacts for them so people could follow on Twitter. And then it's just the whole last half is just, here's what, people in the community are posting, and just I hope it helps people, because I know when I was first starting out, I had no clue that there even was a community like this until, MMS, and was just like, whoa, this is amazing. And so for a lot of people, if they're not on Twitter, or not active enough, and I think some of the people that sign up for the right click tools and stuff like that, they know about right click tools, because who doesn't? And then they just don't know about all these other things, and then once they get that, like, oh wow, there is a community. And so I try to make sure that I put everybody's Twitter handle in there, so I'm hoping to get more people active that just aren't aware. And and I know there's admins out there that just aren't going to take time to get on Twitter, and that's fine too. So this is a way that they can just once a month kind of catch up on what happened on Twitter. And
So they get fired an email as well, yeah.
right, right. So if you've ever like signed up for the right click tools and stuff like that, then you're kind of on a list. Uh, and then a lot of, or at least a lot of the customers of Recast are on a list, and they'll get an email with like, "Hey, the monthly thing is out. This is what's happening at Recast, and check out this post by Gary to see what's going on in the world of workstation management."
That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that an email went out as well. So obviously, I see via Twitter, I see a notification coming.
Right.
Um, and I've been really surprised that I've actually managed to make the cut on quite a few occasions. In fact, sometimes I kind of look at it and go, "Did I blog this month?" Oh, I did. Right. What did I do? Oh, yeah, I did that. So yeah, it's quite cool. And it's a nice recap. I mean, I kind of how I compared it was back in the day. There used to be a web page as part of the Microsoft documentation that had a list of blogs that kind of wasn't comprehensive, but it was a list of the people, mainly the MVPs,
Hmm.
were on there. But you could actually go in and edit it, and there was someone behind the scenes who would approve. But it was a nice little portal to give you some ideas of names and links. So I see it, I compare it to that because that page probably doesn't exist anymore. Um, but this is a nice roundup, and it's fluid, it's up to date as well. Whereas this thing wasn't. This is the things that have just come out that you
Right.
can check on. So it's a yeah, it's a. I was interested to see how long that took you to put together. So it's not something you can do instantly. I know the things I've done with Adaptiva for their kind of
Yeah.
yearly roundups, they don't take. Yeah, yeah, you could just fire it off in 2 minutes, but I like to get a different range of people, different style of person, and the things that they're doing thrown into the mix for that. Um, and yeah, it takes a little while to compile it, and then I mean I had to write a little description as well, which can, takes up time obviously
Oh
as well.
yeah.
So yeah. So you're doing a bit with recast. So it's that. How long's that been going? It's a couple of years or so, isn't it? That you've
Oh,
done that,
it actually be a year here in October, I believe. Um,
right? And did they just come to you and say, "Can you help us promote?" And
Actually, I went to them because quite a few of them at Recast are personal friends and people that I've actually worked with at former employees or employers. So I know quite a few of them quite well. And so when about a year ago or so, I used to work Geek Squad for 13 years uh, in our local store, and they were really pushing me to either quit or work more hours because I'd only work a couple nights a week because that's really all I could. And so they're like, well, corporate law, corporate rules, and everything that they want every employee to work on weekends or so many hours a week. And it's like, yeah, I can't work 20 hours a week, coming into your store.
yeah, this is on top of your day to day. Yeah,
Right, yeah, and for a long time, they were, like, "Oh, this is Gary," it's cool if he only works 1 day a week, it's just worth having him on payroll to have him come in and fix all the issues in that one night a week he comes in, so, but, management changes, and some of them, like, wanna follow the rules a little bit more from corporate, and, and to corporate, I'm just a number. So, eventually, it just came down to either I gotta quit or work a lot more hours. I'm like, "I can't do that." So I reached out to Recast, and like, "Hey, uh, would you guys be interested in having me work, uh, part time with you guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, we'll figure something out." So at first they thought I could be a dev. Um, so I started trying to learn C sharp, and in the meantime, while I was trying to learn C sharp and uh, work with the dev team, they came to me like, "Hey, would you be interested in blogging some of our new features that are coming out and helping us with some of these things?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure. That's, more of my comfort zone." So I did that, and, it ended up that the marketing team stole my, resource time, and I kinda gave up on the dev side and, just been working with the marketing folks.
that, as you say, that's probably more in your comfort zone. So you're probably quite glad of that ultimately.
Yeah, it's still on my list of things that I would like to learn, is C# and development, but it's one of those things, like, it's hard to do part-time. It's hard to learn, when it's not something I'm gonna use at Wells Fargo anyway during my day job.
And finding the time
Right, right.
is key, isn't it? So, which kind of leads me to the next thing I had to ask you about. Then, I'm probably going to guess your answer on this one, but I was going to say, what is your kickback thing then? What's your in your spare time? What are your interests outside of IT?
Oh, right now it's, just pure family time, whatever they wanna do. I used to really enjoy some, like, simulator games on the computer, uh, like train simulators and stuff like that, but I I rarely have touched a computer for a game in years. It's all, uh, just, it's either working or hanging with the family.
Yeah, I was right then. I know what it's like. You sacrifice certain things. Excuse me. You sacrifice certain things to accommodate their needs ultimately. So,
Right,
where you may have poured over hours and hours on a train simulator in the past, well, forget that because
right,
hours and hours don't exist, do they? In that way that they get
right,
repurposed elsewhere and the focus shifts.
yep.
So yeah, you have to kind of. I mean, I used to have back in the day, Xbox, the original
Yeah,
Xbox that I bought for myself, and a 360 that I don't play games at all. I just really, I did back in the 90s, and I bought an Xbox. I could play a bit of FIFA, or maybe a motor racing game or something like that. But it just doesn't happen.
right.
Just they just you know the situation. They just take over, don't they? So, in fact, one of my boys thinks that Xbox is his.
How dare he?
How dare he? The original one. I don't think the controllers still work for it anymore. I think that the wires got wrapped around the controllers so much that they
Mm,
just kind of went. Because he was kind of going the other day. What? Do you remember that original Spider-Man game? Oh, I
oh,
really
man,
want to play that because that's nostalgia for him.
yeah.
Going back to when he was a little kid swinging through New York City or wherever it's a Spider-Man. Feeling the part. Yeah. Brilliant. So, yeah, when you were a little kid. So again, it's going back to that. That question of what you wanted to do as a kid when you were really small. What was little Gary's thing? Like you say, you kind of IT just happened. But was there, a few people have gone, I wanted to be a pilot or I wanted to be a soccer player or whatever. Was there something that you really wanted to do?
Uh, you know, there really wasn't. I just enjoy. I grew up in a small town, so a lot of those kind of jobs you didn't really ever see, and uh, so I guess in the small town it was more of my dad was a barber, and like, well, you always want to be what your dad is, so I kind of thought like, oh, that'd be kind of fun, as a little kid, and as you get older, I'm like, nah, nah,
Did you learn how to cut hair?
no.
Which could have been handy in the last few months, couldn't it? At times.
Yeah, yeah.
So as a kid then in a small town, is it what's that like? Is it kind of in the States? Are you out and about playing all the time? Just, an outdoorsy kind of thing going on?
Yeah, so that was pretty much it. It was, so the town I grew up in was 1,200 people, and, just a little town, but back back, 30 years ago, in a little town, they had everything you needed. They had, the grocery store, they had, uh, um, the post office, they've got the hardware stores, all those little, general stores that, you could live with, and, now 30 years later, those are all closed up, and, you gotta drive to a larger city to get anything like that, but, as a little kid, in those little towns, you could just ride your bike all over town, and that was just acceptable. You could walk around, no fear of anything. There's a park and a lake close by. So it was, yeah, basically just, you wake up and you just spend your days outside unless it's during the school year.
And do your kids get that kind of freedom where you are, or is it a bit more restricted?
It's definitely more restricted. We live in a little community here. We're just on the suburb of St. Paul, so we're out far enough that it's not chaotic like in the city, but, it's still you know, you're just more aware of what's going on nowadays that, you're just a little more protective. It's like, "Stay in the backyard."
You kind of you feel sorry for them in a way, don't you? I remember my kids when they started sort of that age where they want to play out, and luckily we have the garden at the back, which in London is not guaranteed. Um, so they were always thrown out there and playing and things, and but you kind of go, we used to be out. We'd get on the bikes, we'd go for miles, we'd be
Right.
shattered when we got home, so we wouldn't really be bothering mum and dad. We'd be, apart from being smelly and dirty, maybe jumping in the bath, it was like you were out for the count, tired. And I'm sure my parents would say otherwise, and we probably bugged them plenty. But you kind of felt for them. You wanted that for them. It's a real shame
Right.
that happens. And I was just thinking about what you were saying about the hardware stores and things like that. Closing, and people go out of town to the bigger shopping malls or wherever to get things. Do you think COVID's going to change that? Do you think? I mean, is the city empty at the moment where you are?
It's kinda crazy 'cause, we rarely leave our suburb even before this happened, but, when we're out, it doesn't feel much different where we are. It's just that everybody has a mask on now. Traffic's still insane. It was actually a little bit later, when it first happens and they put their first lockdowns in place, but now as they're trying to open back up, it's, like, almost no different. You never know what's really going on other than, certain stores, their hours are a lot less, which is kind of annoying. I stopped at the UPS store to drop and ship a package, and they weren't even open yet. I'm like, "Oh man." Gotta go back home
Yeah,
and wait for later in the day, try to sneak up during lunch and ship something back to Amazon.
yeah, we're so used to 24/7 almost in a way, isn't it? That particularly here in London. I mean, I moved down from the north of England, 20, 30 years ago, and everything shut at 5 o'clock back home. That was it.
Right,
And
yep,
you go where I was living. This shop was open, little corner shop open 24 hours a day. I was like, "Oh, I can go in here at 3 in the morning and you know buy milk and yeah, yeah, yeah." But part of me, it's interesting. I've been into London, but not really into the centre since I've been out on my bike for a couple of bike rides, and on the roads it's a hell of a lot quieter. And people are saying that the outskirts is really busy for traffic, but the centre there's nothing happening.
hmm,
I was talking to a former colleague who said that she was getting on the train into London because she has to go into town a couple of days a week to work back into the office, and she's jumping on at sort of maybe just after the rush hour. Yeah, but not too much after. So you're talking maybe 9:30 ish or whatever. And on her train carriage, there's three or four people on there. Now normally that would be you'd be crammed and pushed up against the door, cattle like
mhm,
commuting in. And it's a huge difference. And then the shops are shutting, so you'd have the sandwich bars, like you were saying. Things are shutting earlier. It seems so in London. It seems a completely different place, and
yeah,
almost like a ghost town. And I need to experience it. But I mean, even this morning, taking my son to the airport, this was at 5 in the morning, and seeing a train go over a bridge. And I said to my son, "There's no one on it," and he says, "Dad, it is 5 in the morning." I said, "Yeah." But normally you would see people on it. There'd be
right,
one or two, and then coming back, I saw a train going out, and again, no one on it. So for us, it seems the cities are definitely being used less. So I'm interested to see what it's like for yourselves out in the states, where I mean, you have different lockdowns as well, don't you, in different
right,
states? It all depends, doesn't it? Who governs decides
right, right.
um, on that. But I think for us here, it's slowly building up, but it's going to take a hell of a long time for the cities, and the cities may, in the meantime, collapse. I mean that's a quite a drastic
Right.
scenario, but there's going to be a huge amount of change.
I'd agree.
And this is London. It's the major city in the country and one of the top ones in the world, and there's no one in there. So it's interesting. I mean, I've been mostly working from home for the last few years anyway. I'll go to customers when there's the need. And the last time I went into London was March, and back then I was kind of like, I need to go. It wasn't like comfortable being there. I want to go, and I
Right.
don't want to go home on a packed train and that sort of thing. But you've managed to keep away from that. So I mean, during lockdown, I mean, you say it didn't really change much for you, but I suppose the whole grocery store experience would have been different. Were you ordering online, or were you just kind of going in, masking up, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so, a little bit of both. We have Amazon Prime every so often, but otherwise, we used to take family trips, and we just cut that out, and I would just get up really early and, just run in and get anything we needed at our local Sam's Club, or I would, order stuff online, and then they'd have it ready for me to pick up, so wasn't too bad.
Yeah, we have this great thing in the UK. Well, I say the UK. One of the supermarkets has started a thing called Chop Chop, and you can. I mean, it's similar to Amazon. You used to be able to order with Amazon and get things delivered fairly quickly for food. So they have this app. I can go in there. I can type in up to 20 items, almost kind of grabbing something in a basket,
Right.
and a guy will drive up on his scooter, and within an hour you've got what you need. So
Nice.
you know, and during lockdown that was available, and I go past the supermarket and see them all queuing up, outside, and thinking, oh, I'm going to use Chop Chop. I'm going to avoid
Yep.
all that.
Right.
Why not? But yeah, even going into a supermarket. I mean, I've not been in a large supermarket since probably March as well. Just hasn't happened. So things are changing. I think some of those smaller shops, as I was saying earlier, I think like the hardware stores, the bakers, the butchers, the grocery stores, all those kind of things might start to reappear over time as people start to shop more local. I think maybe it's different in the States. Um, we seem to be jumping less and less into the cars than we used to.
Right.
But I don't know in the States, because you do like your big cars, don't you? Over
Yeah.
there?
Well, we like our big car because we have to get everybody in, but
That's true. Yeah, gosh, God, yeah. So how's that work then with all yours? So I mean, I've got it's an 8-seater, so yeah, you're just about doing that, aren't you?
right, yeah, we've got our 8-seater, works alright. I wouldn't mind something bigger just to be able to get some more luggage in, otherwise, I've always gotta put a thing behind the truck to put totes and stuff on when we go on vacation, so
Yeah. I
just
was
extra
going to say
strap.
it's the luggage then. So we've got the roof box.
Right, right.
We need a trailer, but to be honest, now I mean we don't have they don't tend not to get in the car at once anymore. Our kids, so yeah, they're all reluctant to go out as their teenage heels kick in. Do you want to pop out? No. Right, fine. Leave you to it. Brilliant, Gary. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today
Yeah,
on the
thanks, Paul.
podcast. Really appreciate you taking part, getting to know you a little bit more beyond beyond the blog and what we see of you out and about in the community. And you are the dream team, yourself and Mike.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's a fun work environment.
Yeah, and hopefully when MMS kicks in again, I'll maybe, who knows, get picked to present again and get to meet you, because it would have happened this year.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks ever so much. Appreciate you taking time out today, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul.